right, I think we're actually going to get started so we can stay on schedule. I am Lori Cohn. I'm the Dean of the Clinical Programs here at GW, and I run 2 of our clinics. I am so thrilled to be here today to kick off our final social impact showcase speakers series. This series has celebrated 50 years of excellence in clinical teaching, client representation, community impact, and professional development that has characterized the GW clinics. More than 6,000 alums have been trained in GW's clinical programs, and I am honored and really humbled to be able to be part of the leadership of the clinics at this time. And we have so much to celebrate. The clinics, with the leadership of our unbelievably visionary and innovative dean, Dana Matthew, are in a period of unprecedented growth. Between this year and next, we will have added at least, it changes every day, but at least 6 new clinics that we are adding to our existing 11 clinics. And many of them are supported by generous donations, and one of them, fully endowed, our intellectual property clinic that's being led by Professor Lolita Darden. And our clinics have never reached as many clients. Last year we worked with 220 clients, nor have they ever allowed as many law students to put in as many hours for client representation as they have in the past year. Last year, our students put in 72,000 pro bono hours working for clients, and 215 students participated in clinics last year. And on top of that, and sort of near and dear to my heart, and I am thrilled, we have also increased our faculty. This year alone, we have 4 visiting faculty members who are leading new and existing clinics. We have 3 fabulous Friedman Fellows, all of whom are here today. And we have just hired 2 new permanent faculty members, Professor Emily Benfer and Professor Lula Hagos. And we are just so thrilled to see them and to know they'll be a part of the future of the clinical program here. And this speaker series has highlighted some of the many members of our extraordinary clinical faculty. And it's also showcased our clients, our alums, and sought to illustrate the impact that clinical legal education has in changing educations, careers, and lives. And that's not news to most of you in this room who are actively engaged in teaching and running and being part of clinical education. And we are so grateful for your partnership and your leadership and your contributions to justice. And now I'm going to turn the session over to Andrea Willis-Johnson, who is our amazing managing attorney and our associate program director. She is a clinic alum herself, and she comes to us from her career in corporate law and has really brought so much energy and enthusiasm and vision to the program. She is a wonderful partner, and she is the brainchild or the brain trust behind the showcase series. And she has just done a marvelous job, and I'm so grateful. Andrea.
Thank you, Lori. Truly the energy, the visionary clinical dean that we have here is incredible. And so it's a joy to work with Dean Cohn as well. And we're excited for this series. We're excited for this session focused on advocating in the criminal defense space. And we have some incredible speakers here that will share their journeys through triumph and trials and the whole journey as to how they represent their clients. And first we have with us Rebecca Hughes, who is currently clerking for Judge Carol Kaduri in Prince George's County Court in Maryland. We have Michaela Sherman, who is starting as an associate at King & Spalding after graduation. And we have Professor Lula Hagos, who is our visiting associate professor of clinical law in our criminal defense clinic, one of our newest clinics. And it's a joy for me to sit down and for us to just have a conversation about all the great work that they have done and will continue to do throughout the year. And so we can kick it off.
And Andrea, and thank you all for joining us today. It's so wonderful to see your faces, many of them very familiar. As Andrea said, I'm Professor Lula Hagos. I am honored to serve as the director of the Criminal Defense and Justice Clinic at GW. And I'm delighted to share more about the work that we do and to be in conversation with our wonderful alums, who are really the stars of this showcase. But I'd like to just take a few minutes to give a brief overview of what we do, and to provide a little bit of my personal background. So I have spent most of my professional career as a public defender in this area. I see some of my former colleagues in the audience, in DC and in Virginia. I took a quick detour to work at a firm, but that was a long time ago. But my career in indigent defense really started with my own clinical experience. I kind of stumbled into clinic. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in law school, quite honestly, and so it wasn't a very intentional process, but I'm so glad I did it. It was really so transformative. It was hands down the best experience I had in law school. Two of my professors in clinic are in the audience, Savita Johnson and Wally Malinek. And it really just changed my career trajectory. I had no intention of being a public defender, a trial lawyer, but once I did the clinic, I fell in love, and I just couldn't imagine really doing anything else. And, thanks to my incredible mentors at Georgetown who believed in me. I remember Vita calling the public defender service and saying, "You got to hire this woman. She's great." When I didn't believe in myself and really supported me in this journey, that path really became possible. And so after law school, I went on to do a fellowship at Georgetown, came back to Georgetown to do a criminal defense fellowship, which really gave me incredible training in the field, an incredible foundation. And I had the opportunity to train and to teach and supervise law students as well in that role. And then I went on to be a trial attorney at the Public Defender Service in DC for many years. And more recently, I was an assistant federal public defender across the river in the Eastern District of Virginia. And then in the fall of 2021, I had the great fortune of coming to GW to launch this clinic. And it has been, a wonderful journey. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Elon Friedman-Grinstein, wave, who is our Friedman Fellow in the clinic, and was really just so tremendous in helping me get this clinic off the ground. We are GW's first in-house criminal defense clinic. One of GW's newest clinics, and it's been it's been a roller coaster, but a good one, I think for all of us. And the primary focus of the clinic is really to provide access to justice to people who are entangled in the system, in the criminal legal system here in the district, and we mainly do that through direct representation. We represent clients who are charged with misdemeanors in DC Superior Court at the trial level, and the need is pretty great here. Over, I think, 90% of people who are charged with crimes in the district cannot afford counsel. So we are filling a very important need here in the district. This is an intensive litigation clinic. Students participate in a very fast-paced, Elon's like, yes, getting whiplash, a very fast-paced program that really immediately immerses them into this experience. They're doing arraignments and bail hearings, bond advocacy in week 1. After we do kind of an intensive 3-day crash course orientation program. And they take full agency over their cases under our close supervision, of course, but they really are in the driver's seat. From the moment a client is arrested and brought to court, through any disposition stage, dismissal, plea, trial, what have you. But that means from the inception of their cases, they are really they're doing it all, right? I mean, interviewing and counseling clients, doing their own fact and mitigation investigation, which is very time consuming, negotiating with prosecutors, drafting and litigating motions, and preparing for trial if a case gets to that point. They're also learning to advocate holistically for their clients. We work collaborate closely with our social worker, clinical social worker I don't see here, Maria Melli, who is wonderful and helps us provide vital, holistic assistance to our clients. Not just to improve their case outcomes, but to really try to improve their life circumstances generally. And finally, I just want to throw out some numbers here. Since our clinic's launch, we have served, and Elon, correct me if I'm wrong, about 60 clients total, or clients in about 60 cases, maybe, because some clients, repeat flyers. And students have handled over 160 hearings. We did the math, so, we've been incredibly busy. Our students are getting incredible court experience. And although our successes are not, measured by case resolutions and outcomes, we are proud to note that I think the majority of those cases have led to positive results for our clients, dismissals, diversion, alternatives to conviction, and an acquittal, which we'll talk about. So it's been an exciting year and a half. And, we're glad to be here. We're excited to see the clinic continue to grow. And with that, I will pass it over to our incredible alums. I can't believe I'm saying alums. I feel like they were just in clinic. Rebecca Hughes and Michaela Sherman. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela. I'm a 3L here. I was in the clinic last semester. And I will be at King & Spalding once I graduate. As Lula said, I was on a case that went to trial, so that was exciting, and I can't wait to
And
chat.
she won.
Yeah, yes. Can't wait to chat more about that tonight.
I'm Rebecca. I graduated last spring. I spent the summer clerking in DC Superior Court on the Felony 1 docket, which was an incredible experience. Right now, I'm clerking in Prince George's County Circuit Court, which is also a really interesting experience and different experience. And I'm hoping to become a public defender after my clerkship's over.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll start off with the first question. So can you both first share with us kind of what drew you to work in a clinic generally, and this clinic specifically?
I can start.
Okay,
Is that
doesn't matter.
So I think I was a little bit, and Lula knows this, but I was a little bit on the fence about whether or not to do clinic. I came into law school with quite a bit of work experience because I had taken a long time off of work and thought, well, maybe I don't need more work experience. But I was really interested in being a public defender after law school and saw clinic as an incredible opportunity to sort of explore that further. And also, having been in the workforce, I knew how kind of few and far between opportunities were to get mentorship and to get sort of like the help that you need when you're at the beginning of your career to develop into insert excellent whatever you want to become. And I knew that if I was going to go into public defense work, I was probably going to be working at an under-resourced office with really intense caseloads, and that I might not ever have the opportunity to sort of get that support and training. So I think that was what I was really looking for and really found when I went to clinic. That's what brought me.
I definitely knew I wanted to do a clinic like as a 1L. Even before a 1L, I had heard of clinics and was like, wow, that's an amazing opportunity to really get to be a lawyer before being a lawyer. And then once I came to GW, I got to know a few students who were in the clinic, and they spoke so highly of it and the hands-on experience that you got, that I was like, I need to do this one for sure. Also, I feel like my natural inclination is towards civil rights litigation. I feel like that ties in really nicely with criminal defense and justice clinic. So I felt like it was just the right fit, and I was absolutely correct. So
good. I didn't pay them to say that. Can you guys provide kind of an overview, right, without revealing client competencies, but an overview of the kinds of cases that you worked on, and give a sense of what your case experiences were like?
Sure.
I know
I'll
that's a
start
big,
because I
broad
feel like it
question.
sort of goes
Yeah.
into yours.
Yeah, there's a connection between the two of them.
So my partner and I, we picked up 3 cases, and I think just sort of by virtue of picking up the cases, our work throughout the clinic really focused more on the first sort of stages of a case life. So we, first of all, I guess the cases we picked up were all assaults. All of our clients were really struggling with mental health issues. One of our clients had like a great support system in his family. Our 2 other clients, not really, and that made a huge difference for those clients. I would say that my work mostly focused on fact investigation, mitigation, and preliminary hearings and pretrial release because all of our clients were detained. So we got to do, and I feel like you never really see those like beginning stages of a case represented in popular culture, and I realized that this was like such a cool and critical opportunity to really help clients, because it matters so much for the case if your client is out, and it also matters so much to your client if they're released from jail, and it really gives you an incredible opportunity to get to know your client and what their life looks like, and to be able to explain that to the court. If my client is released, this is who he'll be living with. These are the things that he'll be doing with his time. These are the services that he'll have access to. And I don't know, the criminal justice system just doesn't really seem to give the opportunity for sort of that look into a client's wider life beyond sort of the bounds of a case. And then you picked up one of my cases.
Yes, I picked up Rebecca's case that we took to trial. So a lot of what we worked on was trial prep, and then of course actually going to trial. My other case I worked on with my case partner. I think we provided a lot more of the social support that Lula was talking about. We definitely relied heavily on our caseworker, Maria, to help us with that. And I think that shows that a lot of clients come from all different backgrounds and need all different types of support. Like you were saying, like 2 of your clients didn't have like that emotional support. So that's also what we worked on providing our clients in the clinic as well.
So just picking back up on what you were saying, Rebecca. So I feel like you had a unique experience because the majority of your clients were detained, I think. It wasn't all 3, maybe 2.
At different times, all
Yes,
of them were.
right,
Yeah.
right. They had quite a bit of experience at the DC jail. But 2 of them you did get released. And can you talk about kind of the difference between when they were detained and when they were in the community, how that impacted them?
Yeah, well, one of our clients who was detained, who you ended up working on his case, he was this close to taking a plea.
Right.
He was just so desperate to get out of jail and to have the matter resolved in any way that he could, that he just really wanted to take a plea and get to the end of it as quickly as he could. But as soon as he was released, the conversation just totally changed. And he was interested in going to trial, which he ended up being acquitted. So that was a great outcome. And then another one of our clients, it was also just really sort of desperate to get out of jail. I would say that experience was a little bit more mixed because we struggled to keep in touch with him when he was out of jail. I mean, obviously, it's a good thing when your client is released from jail, but you also don't always know where to find them. And his case had a good resolution as well, but that was sort of like an eye-opening experience for me that, okay, like this is something you need to think about if you're an attorney representing these types of clients.
Yeah, I think they both had very rich experiences in clinic and like a diversity of cases and clients and challenges. So one of the things, we focus on, obviously, is like you learn how to represent clients effectively through client-centered advocacy, right? At the heart of what we do is amplify our clients' voices. Can we just take a few minutes to share what your experiences were like with your clients and telling their stories, and what you learned about yourselves as advocates from your clients?
Definitely, I can start if you'd like. I definitely feel like this came into play during the trial. So we were arguing self-defense in the assault case, and I found that it really came down to conveying our client's mindset at the time, and that was, I wouldn't say it was challenging, but it was. I guess I learned that I could be an advocate. I was nervous going into it that, like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, who am I to represent someone? But then when you get up there and you see your client in court and you see them testifying, you just realize, I have to do this. I have to do it for my client. I have to be their voice before the court to tell their story because no one else is going to. So I found that was very enriching.
I think my story is maybe a little bit more depressing. Sorry. We had a client who ended up taking a plea. And this case, I think it'll just stay with me for the rest of my life. I don't understand why she was charged. I don't understand why they were so intent on bringing, I mean, she was, I guess, if you looked at it very narrowly, she was guilty. But nobody was hurt. The victim in the case didn't even want the case to go to trial. He wanted her case to be diverted to mental health court, and the prosecutor just didn't care. And she wanted it to be over and had zero faith in the system and didn't want it to go to trial. And she ultimately decided to take a plea. And I mean, it was awful. She was in the middle of a mental health crisis. An ambulance was called, and what ended up happening is she was, instead of being brought to the hospital, she was charged with assaulting an EMT. And so we went to court, and she was going to take the plea. And literally, I felt like the only way that I could advocate for her was to tell her story to the court, and to tell how incredible it had been to get to know her and what an incredible and resilient person I thought she was. And I just remember having this impression that, nobody's listening. The prosecutor's over there and he's typing God knows what, and the judge is sort of seems to be like he's zoning out, and like a tragedy.
He was listening, though.
He was. I hope. I felt like really just a tragedy was unfolding, and that was sort of the only thing I could do in that moment, and I think that has value, but certainly it didn't feel like enough in that moment. Yeah. So yes, I think that that's really important, but it's not all we obviously want to do.
And she clearly heard Rebecca. I mean, I think she was very touched during that sentencing hearing. It was a very emotional hearing. I was close to tears, quite honestly, and I think the judge wasn't engaging actively, so I could see why Rebecca thought maybe he wasn't resonating with him. But he ended up giving a sentence that was better than we were asking for time served, and he came up with something better than that, so that any additional credit she got would go to another case that she had. But I think there was another unique challenge in that case because this client wanted Rebecca and her partner to ask for the maximum sentence. Not only did she want a plea, but she wanted to ask for 180 days, which was the maximum, and insisted on it. Rebecca had some unique challenges with the client counseling piece of it, because her life, was just so tragic that, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. She had been a victim of sexual violence and had endured, horrific trauma. And her life on the streets was just so unbearable that she preferred to be in jail as long as possible, and told Rebecca, keep me in jail as long as possible, which was, obviously in conflict with what we wanted for her. And, we had tried to find alternatives, but she had this other case to deal with, and that prevented us from getting her that treatment immediately. And so that was another really unique challenge. But Rebecca just laid it all out there, and it was just a really touching moment, and I think the client really appreciated it. Wonderful. Well, I know I was gonna piggyback on what you were saying about one of your clients, Michaela. I know you also had some unique challenges in ensuring that your client's interests and voice had been amplified, right? Can you share a little bit about that too?
Definitely. So yes, our other client, she also was struggling with a lot of stuff in her life, and still is. But we got to the point where she, I think, was very similar, where she just wanted things to be over with, and so she wanted to take a plea. And even though we tried to explain all of her options, that's just what she wanted. And so even if our best recommendations were counter to what her desires were, ultimately it's her decision. Even though it was pretty sad to watch it happen. But I mean, the most we could do is just provide her support in her decision, and also provide her community support, like I said, through Maria and any other support we could find her. But I think that was really difficult for both me and Ellie, my case partner, to watch.
Yeah, and her case was ultimately going to get dismissed. It was as a part of the plea was part of diversion. But what she had cared about was keeping her housing, and a conviction meant she would lose her housing, and so I know they struggled with that because they wanted to go to trial, but ultimately, we're guided by what the client wanted, right? Great. So, we've spent a lot of time in clinic kind of reflecting on how our casework is a reflection of the broader system, right? The criminal legal system. How do you guys think your clinical experience shaped your view of the system, if at all, or the world generally? And yeah, if you could share that with the audience.
I could go first. Yeah. Okay. Maybe this is kind of pessimistic, but I think it reinforced some of my ideas about the criminal justice system. I'd seen it from both sides. My uncle has had lots of run-ins with the law, unfortunately, because of his mental health struggles. So I've seen how the system, he just got stuck in it and is still in it for 40 years now. And I've also seen the other side, because a few years ago, my aunt was murdered. So I've seen both sides and seen all of the cons that come with it. And I think just living it and having to advocate for people through the clinic just reinforced my idea that the system needs extreme reform. So I didn't have much hope afterwards, but I do have hope that maybe we can, I don't know, by students participating in the clinic and more people, opening more people's eyes to the reform that's necessary, maybe there's hope there. But I think it just reinforced my idea that the criminal justice system is in serious need of help.
I also think I went into clinic with the idea and with the understanding that the system was very broken. I think sort of two extremes. I was surprised by the cruelty that I saw in it, and just the indifference. But on a lighter note, I was also blown away by some people who just really went out of their way to advocate, and were in that system for the best of reasons. So one of my clients had a parole officer, and she wrote the most beautiful recommendation for advocating for her client to be, for her case to be diverted. And that
because
was
Rebecca, let me be clear, advocated for that. I mean, she had this idea, and I was like, she's not going to do the probation officer.
But it was incredible. It was this woman who had a background in social work, and that was what had ended up bringing her to the work that she was doing. And she wrote this like really beautiful letter. And I don't know, I think it's like important to I think it's important to recognize those people and to keep them in your sights while you're doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, I would just second that. I think your experience is very similar to my own clinical experience as a student. I think I understood in the abstract how deeply flawed the criminal system was, but I think working with people up close, right, and seeing how uniquely traumatizing I think the system can be, especially for people of color, really, I think is what ignited the fire in me to do this work. I remember, now the Wally's right in front of me, being in juvenile court, and, you know, they had prepared us in training, and, you know, we thought we knew what we were gonna expect, but seeing a group of young Black kids, not older than 13, in shackles, you know, back then when they were shackling kids for a fist fight, if I recall. Like, I just remember it was something so small, and they were just treated so inhumanely, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was outraged and turned to Wally, and he said, "Welcome to juvenile court. This is every day." And so that really sparked an outrage when you see it day in and day out, up close, you know, and very personally. So thank you for sharing that. Has the clinic at all shaped your career path? Hopefully, you know, it's not a public defender clinic, but, or your professional identity generally?
I was like pretty interested in going into public defense work prior to clinic, and I applied to be a public defender after, and that, you know, I didn't pan out, which is fine. I'm enjoying my clerkship, but I intend to go there after. But I think actually the moment it really clicked for me how much clinic had changed, my understanding of what my trajectory needed to be was this fall. I was given a really great job opportunity. It was one that I would have like leapt at a year ago, and when I got it, I felt sick. I was like, I thought I wanted this, and now I have to turn this down because it's not being a public defender. And that's really what I want to do. So what an incredible gift to know that. And I wouldn't know that without clinic.
So, and if any of you are hiring, that's great.
I think the clinic definitely already, like I said, tied nicely with my natural interest in civil rights litigation. And I think to your question about professional identity, I think, like I alluded to earlier, it helped me realize, oh, I am already an advocate and like can be an advocate for someone. So I think it helped me like grow into that confidence to be able to represent clients or individuals and help me realize that myself. So.
Did anything surprise you in clinic?
I think the biggest surprise was probably just how much autonomy we do have over our cases.
Please supervise.
I remember in those first few supervision meetings asking Lula, like, so what do you think? And she'd go, well, what do you think? I don't know. So I think the autonomy we had over our cases, like, we really are the lawyers. But that was nice because I think that, like I said, helped me grow into my confidence to be a representative.
I think for me, like, clinic showed me, we had so many different types of people who were doing our clinic for so many different reasons, and they all had really unique strengths. And it showed me that there are so many ways to be an excellent trial attorney. And I think you only like really think like, okay, like you need to be a little theatrical, you need to be like quick on your feet. And we definitely had those people, but we also had people whose strengths were just totally different. I remember seeing one of my classmates who was like an introvert advocating so fiercely for his client, and it was just so impressive. And so I thought that was really neat. There's like a lot of ways to be a good lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that in clinic. Okay, final question. What advice, I don't know if we have any students in the audience, but what advice would you give to other law students who are considering applying to a clinic or this clinic specific?
Do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. It's an amazing opportunity, and you'll learn so much. Even if you don't see yourself being a trial attorney, or if you don't see yourself going into public defense, you'll learn so many skills that are absolutely amazing. So just do it, even if you have a little inkling of interest at all.
Yeah, I mean, same. Just do it. Like, run, don't walk. I'm so grateful I did clinic. And also just if people are looking for community, I think that clinic is like a really great place to find that. And everybody needs community, but law students definitely need it. And people who are interested in going into public defense need it too. So yeah.
I agree. I built a great community out of my clinical experience and, still have lifetime supervisors here as part of that community, so. Good.
Well, this conversation's been incredible and rich, and thank you for sharing. I'm curious, Lula, you just mentioned, and really you see the thread throughout your career of just amplifying clients' voices. And I'm curious how that comes into the classroom when you're supervising Michaela as well as Rebecca, how that has played out in what you teach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's integrated in every part of our teaching. It's all about the client, right? I mean, that's what we do. I think at the heart of our work is to not only amplify voices, but to just create some semblance of dignity, right? I think, in the example that Rebecca gave us, that wasn't a great outcome ultimately, right? But it was the outcome that the client wanted. And she presented who her client was, right, to the court, to the government, whether they were listening or not, but it mattered to the client. So I think it's instrumental in what we do.
That's incredible. What about for folks we do have some students in the audience and thinking about careers.
I'm trying to find them.
We have one there.
Like students.
And folks on both sides in terms of
Yeah.
some prosecution and some criminal defense. And
Yeah.
curious, what advice you might have from the experiences that you've had for anybody going in the prosecution world.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think as Rebecca said, we've had a diversity of backgrounds and interests in our clinic, and I think that's really essential to make, to build a rich clinical experience, right? This is not just a public defender clinic, right? We're not just like preaching to the choir. I think it's good to have those different perspectives. For people who are interested in prosecution work, I think it's important for anyone who wants to be a lawyer to do a clinic, right? No matter what your path is, you learn, incredibly valuable skills that are translatable to any field. But for those who want to do prosecution work especially, I think it's even more important to do a criminal clinic, for those folks than people who want to do defense work, quite honestly, because you will get exposed to working with clients, right? Whereas people who want to be prosecutors won't otherwise. And I think it's critical for people who want to be prosecutors to really understand the very human stories, right, behind the cases they bring, that our clients are multifaceted and complex and are often victims too, right? And I think you'll never be able to get that experience other than by working with a client directly and understanding how deeply nuanced and complex this world is. And I think that makes for a better prosecutor, so I think it's very important.
Awesome. And we have a mixed audience, not just students, but of course we have our clinical conference today.
Yes.
And so a number of clinicians. I'm curious if you have any advice or thoughts for anybody who might not have a criminal defense clinic at their school, in terms of starting it up.
For clinicians?
Yeah, for clinicians.
Okay. I had taught in a clinic before, but running a clinic is a very different experience. And I can say what I did was frantically go to all the wise clinicians, many of whom are in the audience that I know, for advice. I mean, there's just like a wealth of wisdom and resources around us. I think even if I was fortunate to have those people in my community already, but I think even if you don't know people, right, there's a tremendous community around us, and you just have to ask, and people are incredibly generous and supportive with their time and resources. And I think I think any planning also needs to be community informed. I was fortunate to already, be familiar with this community and the stakeholders and, but I think if you're going into a new jurisdiction, it's important to start there and figure out kind of what the needs are and let that inform your planning, so.
Awesome.
But basically, call Georgetown.
Thank you. Well, we want to open it up for questions. I thank you all for coming, and we want to hear if you have anything. Oh, here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to.
We have a mic, actually. That might pick up better.
I'm loud.
You-
I'm just curious what the sort of expectation is in terms of hours and scheduling for students, and if this
You
is,
just left that out.
and if clinics are feasible or doable for part-time evening students because of that.
That's a great question. And Dean Cohen can back me up, but on average, I think the expectation is that you would be spending around 20 to 24 hours a week. It depends on the clinic, but for a 6-credit clinic, 20 to 24 hours a week, if not more, right? Depending on what's going on in your cases. I see some faces in the background. I mean, it could be for, Michaela had a trial, right? It could be more than that, right? It ebbs and flows. But it is really like a close to a full-time job. So I think it can be hard to do with part-time work, my kind of clinic, but there are other clinics that are more conducive to that. And maybe Dean Cohen can jump in.
Oh, yeah.
There's a 2-credit clinic.
Yes,
yeah.
we now have 2 credit clinics that require, thank you. The 2 credit clinics require only about 6 to 9 hours a week of work. So I think that's more conducive to part-time students' schedules. And my hope is that we're going to have more opportunities, particularly for evening students who are working full-time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the tough part is also that the court runs during the day. So, for clinics like our clinic, it makes it challenging schedule-wise, but there are definitely other opportunities.
You have any? Oh, there's a question in the back there.
Good evening.
Hi.
Can I ask a sobering question? I know this is, it almost seems as though you're selling flowers, and I'm glad that you love your jobs, but you do come across some people that deserve to be incarcerated. And that happens, and you have to ask yourself sometimes whether what you're doing to try to get them released is really in the best interest of the general public. So when do you come across that dilemma, and where do you draw the line when you know you're either being lied to by your client or the situation is much worse than they're letting on?
Well, I think, John's pointing to me. That's a great question, and I appreciate it. I think given the nature of our work, we are dealing with misdemeanor cases. And so I think it is rarely the case where people deserve to be incarcerated personally. Our clients are, we're often facing crimes of poverty, cases that often shouldn't be prosecuted in the first place. So that's, I mean, you guys can jump in if you've had those kind of ethical struggles, but that's not something I think our clients or our students are often facing.
I can say personally, like thinking about going into public defense work, it's something that I've struggled with. I come from like a background of doing advocacy for people who have been who were sexually assaulted, and so the idea that the person that I'm advocating for possibly hurt somebody, and if they're released will possibly hurt them again is very distressing to me, and I think it's distressing to a lot of public defenders. But I also think that the system is sort of so broken that you can't participate in any way and not kind of cause harm. If you're going to participate, you just need to be reducing the harm as much as possible. And from the public defender's side, it's their job to reduce the harm for the defendant. And you sort of just have to, I think, for me at least, I think I'll have to kind of come to terms with the fact that my actions may have some pretty difficult repercussions as a defense attorney for other people going forward. And you sort of need to hope that the system will change and that other people will be there who are victim advocates to sort of pick up the pieces, which is a really not satisfying answer, I feel like. But I also think that that's just the reality of the situation we're in.
Definitely. I will say, this is just my personal belief, but I do personally believe that everyone does deserve representation. I mean, that's a right in our system that everyone has. So I do think that's the basic underlying argument, that everyone does deserve to be represented before the court. So. Any other questions?
So Rebecca, you're going to make a great public defender because you can say it was a disastrous outcome and at the same time saying, well, she was technically guilty. And to be able to put those two together is exactly right. So do you feel like your clients saw you as student attorneys or as lawyers?
For me, they seemed to, as lawyers, which was like shocking. But I think they did. So that made one of us.
I'll say that one of our clients, he definitely saw us as the attorneys, would ask us advice and ask us how we think things are going, really put his trust in us. I will say our other client, we had a little bit of convincing to do, but I think eventually we got there. I think the key to that was expressing that we were there to help her and that we were working in her best interest at all times and continuing to provide support, trying our best to fulfill whatever needs she had. I think that really helped her understand that we were her support system. And I think eventually she got there, so.
Take it till you make it.
Essentially.
Any other questions from our audience?
I have a suggestion. You mentioned you'll never forget that client. Most of the lawyers in the room have that client and have that experience. I happen to have it in clinic too. Don't forget it. That's what's going to drive you. Hold on to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. I have one question. So Lula, in addition to the clinic, has been teaching in our racial justice course, along with a number of other faculty here. And we've talked previously about the interplay between how race shows up in the work that you do. So you might all be able to weigh in on it, but just how have you seen that intersection, or where do you see that intersection come up most frequently, maybe in the work that you did in the clinic?
I mean, I think it's infused in everything we do. I don't think, there's one area, over another. I think, criminal defense work is racial justice work. And because of that interplay, race is really at the forefront of our discussions early and often. Over 95% of people who are charged in DC Superior Court are Black. The vast majority of them are Black men. So I think it's impossible to do this work and to be in a clinic without having those very frank discussions. And I think we try to be very intentional about how we talk about race in our cases, in our legal strategy, you know, and the way we negotiate and the way we talk about our cases to the court and that sort of thing. So anyone who's, for the few students who are in the audience, if you're interested in, you know, discussing these issues further, I definitely would like to put a plug in for our racial justice reading group. I don't know if you guys want to jump in.
I'll just reiterate what Lula said. I do remember that was probably my favorite part of orientation, my favorite session. We had a session where we did talk about the racial aspects of the system. So it's definitely infused and instilled in us in the beginning, from the beginning of the clinic. So.
And I agree with everything else you said.
Oh, there we go. Another question here.
Do you find that your work doing defense work has made you want to pursue policy or legislative work for reform? And would you say that working as your experience, specifically being a public defender, is good practical experience to have if you want to move into legislative and policy reform work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I have loved working with clients directly, and I think it will be hard for me to ever walk away from that. But I you know, I appreciate the value in doing policy work, and I do think it's essential for anyone who's interested to have that on the ground experience. I think that makes you a better policy advocate and informs the way, you know, you look at the work that needs to be done. I don't know if you guys.
So many politicians who are former prosecutors. I mean, so many judges who are former prosecutors. It would be amazing to have some more public defenders out there. I think our laws would look really different.
Agreed. I don't have anything to add, but I completely agree. Mm-hmm.
So even if you're interested in policy work, do the clinic. Will make you a better advocate.
I think we have time for one more question. Or comment. Oh, there's one over here.
Hi. I came a little late, so I didn't get the context of, but since those two of you who were working for the clinic, were you registered lawyer representing your clients, or your clients had another court-appointed lawyer? What was the situation?
So we were students, so not registered, not barred or anything, but we worked with our supervisors who absolutely are barred. But we were, I guess, the ones running the cases. We would, of course, be supervised, like I said, by our supervisors. So if we ever had questions or didn't understand something or wanted assistance, we would ask them for help. But otherwise, we were the ones kind of on the case.
They were in charge. We were just in the background.
Yep.
Yeah. They were certified law students. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again for this amazing and thank you all for coming. For those of you who are here for the clinical conference, we do have a reception just down the hall if you go out these doors to the right and head down, and we will see you there. Thank you again.